Is it recording? I think it's recording. All right, so we have a sort button, and we're going to want it to go to a new view controller. So I'm going to throw another view controller on my storyboard. And when you click sort, you're going to want it to go to the view controller. So you can control click from that button straight to your view controller and click show. That should take you straight to that view controller. And I'm going to make this view controller like green. And let's just see how that works. Alright, so let me try that one more time without the breakpoints on. And one thing you can do is go to slow animations for debug purposes. So as you notice, it actually comes up from the bottom. So there's two things we can do. We can add a done button to this view controller to get it to go away, or we can add it to what's called a navigation like view controller, which basically makes it a stack of view controllers, and you can put a bunch of them on top of each other. And that's basically what you see like when the screen kind of does this really cool animation where it slides on top of one another. Do you guys have a preference on what you want to see? Navigation controllers are either one, I guess. Do you guys just vote?
I was gonna say navigation.
No navigation controller? Alright. So what we'll do is when you're looking at a storyboard, there's this little arrow, and that basically says this is the storyboard entry point. That's what it kind of shows up here. What we'll want to do is there's a quick way to embed into a navigation controller. So if you click on this initial view controller and go up to editor, I believe, and then embed in navigation controller, that will actually embed this thing in a nav controller. And so now we've added another view controller. So let me zoom out. And this is our kind of windy storyboard now. Instead of this one being the initial view controller, this one is now the initial one, which is a nav controller. And actually that's what you see in most of the apps is that nav bar at the top. And so there's some cool things. Navigation bar, we can change the bar tint color to like, I don't know, we can do blue. And so as you can see on all the other ones, this one now has a blue. And you also get, if I zoom in here, this back button kind of comes in for free. So you can automatically go back, I think. So let's go ahead and just run this and see what happens.
What puts the back button in? If you
The
put a
nav
navigation
controller. The navigation controller is what
puts
does
the
it.
back button in on everything.
Yeah, so just by embedding in a nav controller, you now have a navigation bar at the top, which is blue. Your table view is actually just already out of the box, just goes underneath it, as you can see as I start scrolling. Kind of gets hidden by that nav bar. But I did lose my sort button. My sort button is now underneath that nav controller. So what I'm going to have to do is on this view, here's my sort button. You have a question?
No, I do not have
Oh.
Move it to navigation.
What's up?
We can move it to navigation.
Yeah, we can move the sort to the navigation bar. Do you know how to do that?
If you drag it, it will come to the navigation.
No, it doesn't allow me to do that. There is a navigation item here.
Else you can create a new button.
So must be navigation item, right? Or yeah.
So there should be
Or navigation bar.
this navigation item. You should be able to drop this on the top right hand corner. Did it go anywhere?
And it's blue.
It says title. Was that there before?
No, I think it was a blank.
No, you're right. So
I think there's a navigation button as
There's
well.
navigation bar, navigation item.
that's all you got: navigation bar and navigation item.
Then been a while since I've worked with navigation bars.
Yeah.
You can create a new button for the navigation
How?
by dragging and dropping it there.
I just tried.
But I got it.
Oh, there we go. So from the storyboard, let me try that again. When I tried to drag it into this like navigation item, it didn't work. But it does allow you to drag it to the storyboard, like to this part of it. So you have the left-hand side, the middle part. What if I do it in the middle? Allows it. So we'll just keep it there. I can't.
You might have had to put it. You might have had to drag it down to the navigation controllers.
It doesn't look like it added it down there though.
Oh.
See, it added it right to where I was trying to drop it. Yeah, I don't know. Let me try that one more time. Because I kind of want it over here. So I've dropped it on the right hand side. So now when I run it again, it should show up on top of the navigation bar. So if I click sort, it slides it over just like that. And if I want to go back, I click back and it takes me right back to it. One of the things that I was talking about over there on that whiteboard was I want to make sure that the this view controller that has the list of cars stays in memory because that's important for this. So this view controller is that one, the one that has the cars. I'm going to go ahead and rename it so it's more explicit. So if you right click on the class itself, refactor and then rename, we're going to rename it vehicles list view controller. Vehicle list view controller. Hit enter. It did not do it correctly, so I now have a red pretty much indicating that I have an error here. So what I do to fix this is I will go to this little folder and re-click it and click choose, and that should go away. The other thing to look at, no.
You've got 2 of them now.
Okay, I did not mean to do that. So let's try that again. I clicked on this guy, I did not mean to do that. It didn't rename the actual file itself, so this is like a blanket over the files. So I'm going to go ahead from here, if I can, rename it. And I want to actually rename the actual file, which is vehicle list view controller. And then I want to choose it as well because that's the location of the file. So let's go ahead and try to build it, see if it compiles. Why is it telling me that this is an invalid redeclaration? Okay, build succeeded. I'm going to run this. And actually, it seems to be working fine. If you guys have issues doing that refactoring, let me know. I don't know why it didn't rename my actual source file. But so for this vehicle list view controller, the way that we can check to make sure that it doesn't actually go out of memory is we can override its deinitializer. And we'll just print out vehicle list was deallocated.
Oh.
Deallocated. Wow. So hopefully that doesn't happen. I'll set a breakpoint there too. And so when I hit sort, it does not hit it. Or no, did it? No, it did not.
If you pause and if you do a visual inspection or
Yep.
I can never remember what that thing's called, but you should be able to see it's still there if you spread apart the
Okay,
layers.
she's correct. Another thing to check to see if it's still in memory is you can see the navigation controller back here. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. I can zoom in a little bit. So the nav controller is at the far back, then that list view controller. No, that's not it, because that's green.
You have your UI navigation controller.
I don't see the other one.
What is that? There's another layer in between. What is that? You've got two layers in between that are just not filled in. That's a transition view.
Yeah, that's not.
And a UI view controller after. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm assuming it just doesn't, draw it.
Yeah, it's not drawing it, so it's not in the hierarchy. I guess the navigation controller would be able to. It is the top of that navigation hierarchy, or that view hierarchy, and so it would change its own children.
Yeah, I don't know. So, at least I'm pretty sure that list isn't dialect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make this vehicle's list view controller the delegate of that other view controller. So what we're going to do is in our main.storyboard, we haven't named this yet. We're going to name this the options view controller. So we're going to create a new file. Swift file. Options view controller. Sort options view controller. And create it. So we call it sort options view controller. And this guy, we're going to want to hook it up to the storyboard. So I'm going to go to the identifier and change it to sort options view controller. And we're now going to create a delegate from this view controller to the other one. And so what we'll do is we'll create something called a protocol. And we're going to call it the sort options view controller delegate. And on the view controller itself, we're going to create a delegate, just a property called delegate, which is going to be this type. And on the vehicle list view controller, what we're going to do is on the segue. So right now our segue only prepares for going to the detail view controller. We also want to do the case where it's the options view controller. So we're going to want to modify this code because right now all it's doing is it's setting some information on that detail view controller. So we can do just a very basic if let. Instead of doing guard, we can do if let. So if it is the type vehicle view controller, then we're going to do this stuff. Else if let. I think you can do else if let. Options view controller is equal to segue.destination options sort options view controller. Then we'll want to set that delegate property that we just created. So we'll say the options view controller.delegate. There's that delegate that I just created. We're going to say it's ourselves. And so what we'll have to do is we'll have to adhere to that delegate. And so I'm just going to create another extension. And it's going to adhere to that delegate protocol. Right now there is nothing on that protocol. So what we'll deal with that in a second. And so the other thing what we're going to do is we're going to want to display that list in a table view. So what we're going to want is some sort of array of options. And so we'll create a new data structure called option. And it's just going to, I don't know, maybe in an enum. And we're just going to have the 3 different cases. One was, I'll just make them up again. Sort lowest to highest in price, A to Z for make, A to Z for model, and then the last one was oldest to newest. And so those are the different options. And so what we can do, so what we need to do is populate a table view essentially. And so in the main.storyboard, I'm going to add a table view. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it some constraints. And we're going to add a cell. And it's going to just have a label. And just throw the label on there. And on the cell itself, there's a accessory. And so you can actually add a check mark. So there's the check mark. And so we need to create a new, let me move this up to this. We need to create a new cell. So I'm going to create a new sort option table view cell. And it's going to subclass from UI table view cell. And I'm doing this so that I can kind of say that this type of cell is of that class, so that I can get a hold of that label. And so I'm going to need to use this and
Because could that be because it's not in a file of its own? Class table view cell.
I'm not sure, but I'm just going to manually choose it. So this label, I should be able to just drag and drop and get a hold of it. And this is the I don't know, like description label. Could not find any information for class names for option 2. So
Did you try cleaning your project?
yep.
I feel like Xcode has issues when you're defining those kind of classes and not in their own files. I don't know why.
Yeah, so I did add the class there, so it
Yeah,
should be.
should have been able to do it.
Yep.
But if you call that description, don't you need for description?
What do you mean?
So are these your selectors?
These are not selectors. What do you mean by selector?
Are these your,
These are. This is just going to be a label that says sort lowest to highest and stuff like that.
okay.
It's just like a label. So all I'm trying to do is add an IB outlet to my cell, and it's just is not happy. So I'm going to close Xcode. Reopen it, and just hope that it works.
But if this doesn't work, you might try just going the other way.
No, that's good.
Sometimes it works going the other way. Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know. So we have a description label, and what we want to do is we need to populate that table view that we just had. So actually I need to open that back up so I can also get the table view. So this table view, I'll also need to make an outlet. Or the last time I guys showed you this, I made an outlet for table view, and then programmatically said table view.delegate and table view.data source is equal to self. This stuff right here, this code, you actually don't need to do that. You can just drag from here to here and just say data source, here to here, and say delegate, and that should be pretty much the same. So now I can just adhere to UA table view delegate. No, I'm going to do the data source first because I just want to populate it. And so we're going to add some of those functions again. So self a row at index path and a number of rows in section. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to cheat for now. I know that we have 4 options, so I'm just going to return 4. And then for the self a row, I'm just going to go kind of quickly here and copy and paste some of the stuff that we did with the DQ reuse cell identifier type thing. And so this is going to be a option cell, and we need to add a reuse identifier, so I'm just going to call it an option cell. And then in the storyboard, the actual cell itself, you go to the should be on this one, identifier, reuse identifier. So add the option cell there, and then this is going to be of this type of cell. And so now we have an option cell, and we should have that description label, and we are going to just so with enums, they don't actually come like with a type right away, but I'm just going to go ahead and create one. So you can actually also make it an int, and so what that means is basically that first one is 0, the next one's 1, the next one's 2, the next one's 3. You can also explicitly say this one is equal to 61, but I'm not going to do that. But to be explicit, I guess I'll go ahead and just throw these in here. And the reason why I'm going to do this is so that when we actually populate this table view cell, I can just basically do option, and you can give it basically a raw value. And so we're just going to do table view dot row, no, index path. Oh my gosh, no. Oh, sorry. We have the index path right here, the index path that it's given to us. So we're going to use it, index path dot row. Yeah. And so that should give us the option. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a description for all these enums. And this is a calculated variable. It's very similar to a function. And it's just going to return a string. And I'm just going to switch over the enum itself. And this guy is going to return like a nice to read description. So sort lowest to highest price. Sort like A to Z for make of vehicle.
Okay. So are you saying
And then the last one is just oldest. Oldest to newest.
so?
And so up here I can actually do description label dot text is equal to option dot description, and that will actually call this function. And so that should give us now we've like kind of decorated that cell with that text, and so we're going to return that option cell. And so I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 methods you need to adhere to for the data source. So we're going to go ahead and run this and see if that table view is actually populated.
Behind the scenes, hard
Are you guys running Swift 9 still? Or is any of you moved to Swift 10? Or Xcode 10? Xcode 9, Xcode 10? You guys still using Xcode 9?
Has anybody downloaded the beta?
Yeah.
No.
Still beta.
I am not.
Should we? I was afraid to.
You can if you want to. I only asked because I cheated right here with like returning 4, which is fine. But there is a new like thing with Xcode 10 and Swift 4. Is it 2 now? They added the ability to like for all these cases that you add. It's called case iterable, and so it'll count the cases for you instead of having to like cheat like this. You can just say option dot number of cases.
Yeah.
All right.
It makes me happy.
That sounds awesome.
Because it used to be that you wouldn't be able to just know how many cases it had in a view, and I'm like, that's
See a bit.
So we have our 4 options: lowest, A to Z, and etc. But it's getting chopped off. I'll fix that. Try to fix that real quick. Basically,
Constraints error.
I didn't add any constraints on purpose, hoping that it would just work. But there is this line break. I'm gonna add a word wrap, which means that it'll wrap per word, and change the line number to 0, and just hope that helps.
No problem.
Yeah. Nope. It just kind of.
so. Yeah, should be. You have dynamic content in the label. I'm trying to remember how to set the constraint for dynamic content because it's usually intrinsic content size. But
I just kind of made it bigger, and let's just see if it works.
it'll
better.
work
Oh no!
now that you made it.
I
bigger,
missed the
it'll
wrong
work.
thing. You can't get out of that screen. Can you?
Yes.
No, you can't get out of that screen.
Wait, didn't the nav thing?
So I don't know if you guys noticed. There's no blue on this one. That is because this type of segue is show detail. If I change it to show, it'll add it. The show detail is a little bit different. That's kind of, I don't know. It's just a different segue. So before I was like locked in there. Oh no. As you can see, if I tap this really quick, it segued twice. I don't know, something interesting. So the sort, there we go. I kind of just wanted to show you guys without auto layout because I think auto layout confuses a lot of people. But this like sizing actually doesn't have auto layout yet. So all I did was make it bigger, and so now we have our 4 options. So now what we need to do is when the user taps on, first off, none of these should be selected. So what we want to do is set these to not be selected. So there should be a accessory shows maybe accessible. I think it's this dot is hidden. We're just gonna try that for first. This guy right here, this little it says accessory, but doesn't say accessory view. So I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Nope. Let me Google this real quick. iOS accessory checkmark off or something. Accessory type? I already have that. Oh, you literally turn it to none and check mark. Okay. So I guess the accessory type, you will default it to none, and then as they're actually selected, we will, we'll change them to whatever that is. I'm sure it's just like check mark. Yeah. So let's see if that works. Yep, check marks are gone. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the delegates for when they're selected. So did select. Come on. Oh. Sorry. First thing I forgot to do was we're adhering to the data source protocol, but we haven't added the delegate. And so the delegate is actually when the user selects something. And so when the user selects a row, what we're going to do is we're going to turn that check mark on. And then we're going to let the list view controller, or basically our delegate, this guy right here, we're going to tell the delegate that the options were updated. And so to turn the check mark on, right now all we have access to is the index path. So what we'll do is, pretty sure, what we're going to need to do is, man, you have any ideas?
Sorry,
No, you're good.
I've zoned out.
Does anyone have ideas? So we have,
Can you rehash the problem?
well, yeah. So right now all we've done is populate this. What I feel like what we need to do is add a state, is like is selected or is not selected sort of thing. Is clicked, is, yeah.
So we need to keep track of which buttons are selected, and we need to be able to send that list back through the delegate.
Yeah.
Well, but first we just need a check mark to appear on the row.
Fair enough.
So what I'm gonna suggest, what I'm just gonna suggest is we create a new, it doesn't have to be a struct. It could even be a tuple. But we have two properties. One is the option itself, and the other one is the whether it's selected or not. And so we're gonna create a new struct called option. No, I don't know, like option data. I don't really know. And so it's going to have a like the option that's selected, which is of type option, and it's going to have the state that is checked, like kind of what he was saying. So it is going to have a Boolean of is checked, and so we're going to hold on to basically an array of these things. And so I'm just going to cheat for now, and we're going to create an array of options, and it's going to be of type option data. And we're just going to start creating these guys. So the way you create them is just option data. And so the first one is the first option, which is lowest to highest. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Patience, it will load.
It's so slow. Okay. And all of them are going to be defaulted to false. So I should be able to basically just make 4 of these. Oh no. Lowest to highest, A to Z for make. And
it's not filling because it wants you to make it a var instead of a let on line 10.
I think it's just this.
There you go.
I had the syntax wrong. So now we have an array of options instead of kind of what this was doing. We're going to say the options at the index path.row. That's how we'll access that array. and we'll say the description. Why? Oh, option dot description. And then it's going to be, depending on whether it is checked or not, it's going to be none or check mark. So what I'm going to do is, I'll just hold on to a reference of the option. I wish I could think of a better name for this because it's going to get confusing.
Selections.
Selection. I like it. I like it. So that's a very good one. And so this will not be options, it'll be selections. And selections. Okay. So what we're going to do is selections. What's wrong? I don't know why. So, oh, because of the line 27. So all I was going to do before is go ahead and just kind of throw this into a variable so it's a little bit more readable. So the actual selection that we're dealing with at this index path is going to be this guy. And so so the accessory type is going to be whether it's checked or not. If it is checked, then it's going to be check mark. Otherwise, it's going to be none. And so,
Is everybody familiar with the ternary structure syntax? Cool.
so what we're doing here is we're creating an array.
It makes sense if you look at it.
So when you're reading it, can you just pause on the ternary?
Yeah,
for a
this thing.
second? So that ternary, so you have a Boolean value, then a check, then a question mark, and then a value, a colon, and another value. And so what it's saying is, if this Boolean is true, we're going to do the first option. Otherwise, we're going to do the second option.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
It's just a shortcut instead of an if-else statement.
So we have an array of selections, and I'm just defaulting all of them to be false at the very beginning. And so when we go to that, all of them should be false. And so at this point, when something is selected, we can basically access it using that index path, that row, and just flip it. That would make me have to basically change this from a let to a var. And let's just see if we can do that. So we'll do selections at that index path, that row, and is checked is going to be equal to basically like its opposite of, so
Not is checked.
yeah.
Do you need a mutating function for that?
I don't think so. Maybe. We'll find out.
Structs are not mutable.
What's a var? Okay. Okay. So we've turned the check mark on, and so now instead of when this view is created, we're creating an array, and this array is going to have a check mark for each option, whether it's check marked or not. And so what we'll do is whenever it's selected, does everybody get this part? I'm basically just flipping it the opposite of what it was. What we'll do is we're gonna send this array back to the list view controller so it knows what to do with the sorting. And so we'll just create a new function and say sort options changed to the new selections, sort selections, I guess. and it's going to be given an array of selections. And so if I build this, it's going to tell me that this guy needs to adhere to it. And we'll fix that. And so there we go. And so at the very beginning of that whiteboarding session, I kind of said that we were going to have the vehicle list view controller hold on to the array. So what we're going to do is right now the sort options view controller has an array. What we want is the vehicle list view controller actually to have that array, and so I'm going to move it from the view from this guy. So right now here are the selections, and what we could do is so right now I'm seeing what's called like source of truth. When you pass around arrays from like object to object and you start like trying to like change variables on them, you don't really know which one is the source of truth. You always want a source of truth, and then you don't want to copy these arrays from object to object. So I'm going to try to do my best to just implement that practice now so that we don't start seeing issues in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm moving this array out of here into this one. And what we're going to do is from this sort options view controller, it now needs an array of options. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make that view controller, the list one, basically the source of truth. And so we're going to say options, and again it's the same thing, or selections. And so this class will not hold on to that array. It's going to ask for these selections. So when it comes time to populate the table views, it's dumb. It doesn't know. It's going to ask somebody else who happens to be that list view controller for the options. And so this syntax is this is saying, hey, this is a calculated variable, and all I want to do is grab it, and that's what the get is. And so for all of these, we're going to say delegate. One thing is this delegate is optional. I guess I could get into it now, but I'm not going to. You don't want to hold on to view controllers tightly from another view controller. You can actually create what's called basically a memory leak. When it comes time for these view controllers to like go away, if they hold on to each other too tightly, they actually won't be killed by the like the memory management tool. And so these have to be optional. And so right here, I'm going to add another condition to this guard statement. And so I'm making sure that the delegate hasn't been turned to null. So if on this view controller, for some reason that list view controller goes out of memory, we can no longer calculate this sort of stuff. So let's delegate. And so instead of having the selections on this view controller, we're now asking for it. And so the same thing is going to have to happen here. So all right, and so delegate.selections and delegate.selections. And so we were not going to do this anymore. What is wrong? Cannot assign to property selections is a get only property. That's fine. That is fine. And so what we're going to do is instead of actually doing this whole checkmarking flipping here, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the list view controller that something happened. And so all I'm going to do is pass back select function called selected at new selection at. Integer. And so instead of actually this view controller being the ownership of changing the flag, we're just going to be dumb and be like, okay, something was selected, we're going to let that other view controller take care of it. And so we're just going to say there's a new selection at a specific, part of the array. And so we're just going to say delegate dot new selection at the index path that row. And so the vehicle list view controller now has to implement those two methods. So
I want to draw one car. I don't know.
come on. So now this guy is going to be the sole proprietor and managing of what is checkmarked and stuff. So now that we have a new selection, we are literally just going to move that code that we had over here, there. So I'm going to remove this out and come back here. And so this is the guy that has the selections now. And so so that view controller is like, okay, hey, there's a new selection. And then so this view controller is like, okay, great, I'm going to flip that. And that's pretty much it. And so what we're going to have to do is reload the table view with that new data. And so we'll say table view dot reload data. And that is not it. There should also be this thing right here is also technically part of the delegate, but I guess I'll just keep it up there.
If you wouldn't be able to move it to the extension.
You can't, no. So you can't have stored properties, which is what this is. It's an array that stores data, and you can't move those to extensions. But this thing right here, this sort options delegate, does have two things. It's the new selection and the array of selections. It asks for the selections, and it also just lets the delegate know, when something has happened. So let's just see how this works. Right now, all we should see is the flags getting flipped. And they're getting flipped. So this vehicle list view controller that has basically two things now. It's got an array of selections, and it also has this cars model that should have an array of vehicles. Typically, we haven't talked about this yet. We'll have to do this in another class, but in your other classes, I'm assuming you've learned of model view controller, where every view you split out the functionality into something that's called a model, which is just data. And then here's a view controller, but it's a little bit different in iOS than it would be in kind of web development. But you typically don't want to just throw arrays into view controllers. I'm just kind of doing it willy-nilly for just to show you guys some stuff. But for good coding practice, what you should do is create these things in a model. So right here, there is vehicles. I'm going to add the selections there too now. And so now, finally, this thing is, I can move this here now. So it's asking for selections. I can actually return model.selections. So now it's kind of a little bit more separated into single responsibility. And so I'll run this again. So the cars model really is the end all be all. So this model right here, you have an array of vehicles, and you also have an array of selections. And so when one thing kind of gets flipped, you should be able to start sorting these vehicles. So one last thing I guess I'll do before I kind of like see if you guys can start sorting it yourself is right now this view controller is doing this new selection. Really what you would want to do is pass this function, or pass the functionality to the model, so the model is actually doing the work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function on the model itself, and it is going to do the work. And so model dot new selection at index, and instead of that code existing in that little function back there, it is now going to exist here, because now what you can do is you can actually, so this method's going to get called every single time a user selects a new one. And so what you can do is you can filter your things here, or I'm sorry, sort the vehicles array, and that is pretty much it. I will commit this, and then you guys can start working on actually just start like sorting these things, if that is cool.
Whenever you have any class, you always want to make sure it starts in